Tēnā koutou katoa, nā mihi ki atua, mihi ki te ora, te hei Māori ora. Ko Garry McDonald tuka wingoa, he mihi nui, he mihi aroha. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome to Interdisciplinary Theme Form 4 in terms of our harnessing technologies, disruptive technologies for earthquake resilience. I'm Garry McDonald and I co-lead this program with Professor Nirmal Nair. Nirmal, next slide. Yep. Okay, in this is a new program to QuakeCoRE 2, where we're trying to understand what the transformational, i.e. order of magnitude advancements in New Zealand's infrastructure resilience can be achieved through strategic adoption of disruptive technologies. And when we talk about order of magnitude, we're talking about something that's beyond one asset management cycle, and that seems to work with engineers when we're talking about something that's probably 20 to 30 years beyond now. We hypothesize in this program that the rapid adoption of these technologies may result in significantly greater resilience gain than the conventional approaches of incremental as we go investments. Our intention in the program is to enable seismic resilience through co-benefits while minimising societal, economic and environmental costs associated with increased interconnectedness. So I suppose what we're trying to do is what's the best path forward in terms of New Zealand and also seismic resilience in the global environment too, in terms of what we can do with disruptive technologies and how we may use those, and while at the same time minimising the impacts that may be associated with those that are unintended. So we're particularly interested in minimising those social, economic, environmental costs, and also any locked-in path dependencies that we may have, and also producing inequitable societal outcomes while avoiding producing those. Next slide, Nirmal. So our program's basically got 5 key themes within that. And I'll just focus on these and just have a little bit of a discussion about them before I pass over to Nirmal, who's going to talk about more in-depth parts of those programs. So the first of our 5 key areas is one is the renewable distributed energy. And in that particular program area, what we're interested in understanding is what is the failure hierarchy of renewable distributed energy system to seismic events. What is the best way for investments to occur to provide resilience as we transition to a renewable and distributed energy system? The second area, which is a little vehicle there, is around autonomous transportation, where we ask how does the trade-offs between electrification of transport, reducing vulnerable resilience to liquid fuels, but increasing resilience requirements for electricity play out over time. So really it's this emergent process and how things may change through that in the transport system, and particularly around electrification of transportation and what that may mean in terms of the change and how that will play out, particularly with regard to the seismic events and components as we adopt those. We're also interested in how well autonomous transportation modes function in a non-business as usual world, i.e. The world where there's going to be a lot of change, including with increased hazards in particular, in the case of seismic hazards. Okay, the third area that we're really interested in, and we've got work going under it, and Nirmal's going to talk a little bit about this, is in the area of smart cities. And what we're really interested in there is how can real-time sensing enable early detection of network degradation pre-event, and also provide situational awareness post-event, which we hope will allow us to facilitate more rapid recoveries to seismic events. Yeah, so we're also interested in how can utility networks develop resilience to external risks within the urban environment. So that's the third area. The fourth area is really an area that we've left open, and it's really to allow that we know there are a lot of different types of emerging disruptive technologies out there that will have an impact on how we negotiate and work our way through potential future seismic events. So what we've done is we've got an area there on emerging disruptive technology, and that's really a placeholder for any other types of technologies that emerge or become of critical interest over the course of the program, given that we've got 7 years through this QuakeCoRE 2 program. So we've left a gap there, so other emerging technologies can be discussed and understood. The fifth area is really about how we go about doing modelling and evaluation, particularly in response to looking at the impacts associated with disruptive technologies. And I suppose there we want to be able to create some new novel toolkits that allow us to evaluate the change and be able to look at some of those unintended consequences, particularly environmental, social and economic areas going forward. And what we're particularly interested in there is heterogeneous distribution of impacts. So rather than looking at averages, we're much more interested in looking at individuals and looking at how it will play out for people that sometimes are at the extremes and are not in a position to be able to look after themselves. So yeah, we want to be able to get a much better handle and understanding of what those impacts look across societal groups, within the groups, etc., that make it up. And we believe that will radically or could radically change the way that we actually do our business case evaluation in terms of cost benefit analysis and so on. So yeah, as associated with all the disruptive technologies of society, environment and economy. So look, I'm going to pass over to Nirmal now, who's going to go through 3 distinct projects. At the end of that, Nirmal and I will come back and we will talk through and also describe what the work program is over the next year. And then we'll just end and give you a little bit more information on what will be happening next in our program, but also in this seminar series. So over to you, Nirmal.
Thanks, Garry. Can you hear me?
Yes, clearly.
Okay, Morena, everyone. So I am Nirmal Nair, and thanks for joining us in this call today. Garry set the stage for this. So this vision we kind of developed over 2019, 2020 during the repeat stage, and we are really happy for the science leadership team of QuakeCoRE 1 to give us a standalone program to incubate around looking at seismic resilience, but more increasingly looking at the seismic event over the next 30 years or so, where the infrastructure might be quite changing. So that's where the vision was. And over the past year or so, we have started this thing up. And one of the things of the Center of Research Excellence is to build a highly capable interdisciplinary scientists and engineers and practitioners. So the way we do it in Center of Research Excellence, this might not be true for who is joining in the call today, but I think this is going to be put in YouTube and for international audience who's watching this. It's primarily around PhD students, right? And looking at really interdisciplinary and, if at all possible, transdisciplinary research around that part. So in that sense, it is around cutting edge research which supports the seismic resilience. And we have the vision and the value of QuakeCoRE. You can go to the website, QuakeCoRE 2, and it has made not only a national name, but also international recognition over the past 4 to 5 years. And we want to build that, and that is our aspiration to do that. So with that in mind, I'll go through a few projects which are startup projects at this stage. So the first one which I want to talk about, or we want to talk about, is a 2-year program which we are supporting to the core funding allotted to IP4. It's not contestable fund. It's not that much, but at least it sets the tone. So we don't want to start afresh, but we want to start from some of the learnings which is around earthquake early warning. It's EEW, right? So for the people, there's a lot of acronyms, there's a lot of engineers around here. So the 2-year program which we are kind of looking at and supporting just as a startup phase is extend the warning window for earthquake early warning. And this is led by Dr. Raj Prasanna, who is well established within the QuakeCoRE community. His home base is Massey University at this stage. So I won't go into much of these details here, but the key idea which we are supporting this is the center where he works for in Massey University and the research centers, which are strong linking with disciplinary theme. I believe it's DT3, have developed over the years, working with the community, with the technology here, and from the science side, trying to kind of build artifacts and then try to evaluate that with this one through some prototype field testing and the like. But also, as I mentioned, this is more of a center of research excellence for seismic resilience. So there are certain techniques which this group has been looking at in the past, including ground motion data, earthquake, seismic, physics, signal processing, and the like. But in this project, they would like to explore P-wave-based EEW implementation. If anyone is interested, you can have a chat with Raj later on. I won't go into those details. But at the end of the day, it is just to add on to what it is and exploring some new things and kind of ideate that process in the next couple of years. This project would start from April of this year. So this is just a tidbit which I wanted to share. The second project which we are supporting for the couple of years, starting from April this year, is an interesting project from Dr. Christine Stock. She's with the Massey Geoinformatics Collaboratory. And she has also been active with the QuakeCoRE 1 community informally through QuakeCoRE annual meetings and the like. But the project which we are kind of looking at is exploring mapping earthquake impacts from text messages, right? So this is just an example which she kind of did, qualitative and quantitative. So assuming that there's going to be a future seismic event here in Auckland, right? It's going to be, I don't know, there's some damages outside St. Mary's Cathedral. It's a landmark for us here. In power line next to the Sky Tower, that's down. I don't know how that's down, but anyway, let us assume that. But the key idea is buildings damaged around Britomart, right? So, how do you identify it? How do you disambiguate it? How do you georeference it? Because everyone will be in that text messages and things like that. So I think it's just a use case. And since Christine is coming from a technical background, from a software background, but coordinating with GPS, SatNav, analysts, calculating distances and things like that, and usually looking at hazard event where really speaking, what COVID has taught us is, privacy and these things are important, but during pandemics and large scale thing, it is a scalability and it is the adaptability of these technologies so that it is, it's efficient, right? And so her intent is, hey, if this does happen, then people surrounding here at that particular event would get early warning messages through some kind of other communication mechanism like text and things like that. Obviously, she would be doing deep learning models closer to AI, maybe, because you can see multidisciplinary trends here, and models to detect impact details and things like that. I hope I've given justice to Christine. She's a fantastic speaker. She presented to our group, I think in October, November last year, and we thought, oh, that's a cool idea. And so we are just incubating a startup project this way. So this is another example, which is just taking shape. More you will hear through the coming months and years. The last one is a different take. This is actually, there's a PhD student. She just got a University of Auckland doctoral scholarship, but she's working in a similar area like us. So one of our emerging researcher, Kevin Wang from University of Auckland, they are looking at sensor anomaly detection and basically looking at machine learning or data process outcomes, heavily dependent on sensor data quality. So this is a real sensor which Kevin and his group have developed. I think it is for civil infrastructure or for something else in 2000. You can see it is all dated. So what it tries to show is, hey, on 21st of March, suddenly something has gone wrong. The temperature is showing it as 120 degrees centigrade. Really, it's not possible, right? So there must have been some problem there. Obviously, it's a sensor failure drift, right? But this could have happened because of the sensor itself, or the sensor is powered by power failure, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. But if you're going to build millions of sensors across all over the streets and things like that, human intervention for this large-scale data sensing is not feasible, right? So the idea is, can you, automate it, sensor anomalies up to thousands of sensors? How do you do it? What is a basic base? Obviously, again, he's going with an, I think she's trying to do it with sensor anomaly detection. There are some neural nets and testing and trajectory and anomaly. How fast can you test it? Can you do it? And so on and so forth. So this is a project where actually IP4 is not funding, but she has got her own funding, but she would like to engage with us. And she's leading that project. So co-funding example is also there. So she started in, I think, in January earlier this year. So these are 3 examples which we just wanted to show as a startup. There are more to come. I will leave it at there, and I'll pass it over to Garry maybe, and let us discuss about IP4 activities. Unless you want to share a little bit more, Garry, over to you.
That's fine, Nirmal and stuff. So yeah, do we want to have a little bit of a talk about those activities that we've got coming up? So if you flick to the activities slide.
Yeah, can you see that now?
Yes.
Okay, so why don't you start with the first one, monthly deep dive meetings?
Yeah, so we, like most of the IP and DT themes, we would actually run a monthly seminar series that we work through, and the series actually we showcase bits of work that have been done. We've been going along at least a couple of speakers each period. We've decided that's probably too much of a commitment in terms of everyone's time, so we've cut it back to one speaker through it. And the way that we run that is we actually are getting those speakers to actually do their presentation and then to ask questions of the audience to engage in terms of what they think they can get out of the research. So it's the reverse of the normal question and answer session where people normally just ask questions of the speaker. Here we're asking the speaker to actually ask questions of the audience and then to get some more extra out of it. So that does keep people on their toes because you don't know who's going to be asked. So, but everyone's welcome to come along to that. I think it's a great way. Those are actually stored in our IP4 wiki, so you can have a look on the QuakeCoRE and have a look there. There's an agenda in the next meeting, I believe, is around the 29th of March that we've got for that. The next actual session there, beginning at 11 o'clock through to 12. So, and please just email either myself or Nirmal, and we can connect those two. Can connect you to those. We've also got planned a workshop style hui really around the 17th of May, when we're going to be talking about, well, look, what can we do with the research and collaboratively across the team and bringing everyone together into it and start to look at how can we take the research contributions that we're doing in a collaborative way further than we could as individuals. And I think that's a key aspect to our program. We're very much about trying to build the capacity and capability of our team to move forward, not just within the QuakeCoRE research area, but within wider areas as well. And we'll be looking and helping people to actually seek out research funds to push the work further in that particular workshop. That workshop will also lay the foundations for some high quality science excellence research too. I mean, the core themes that will come out of that are going to be areas where we're going to be targeting paper writing and components through that in a joint and collaborative way. Hopefully taking some of the burden away from the individuals and sharing them a bit more amongst all of us. We've also got this external bid ideation really occurring sometime between June and July. We haven't worked out exactly when that will be, just COVID willing, and also hopefully we're hoping to make that face-to-face. So we're not putting down the exact date right now. But once we actually know that we've moved through this wave, hopefully, of COVID, and things have got to the level where we can travel, we will be doing that as well. And that's really around the key ideas and how not only looking at the 5 areas that I discussed earlier and also the research programs that were going on that Nirmal talked about, but more around how can we actually take ideas and link them up across the program and making more of that. Yeah. And also, I think we've also got an IP4 panel offering and discussion for the QCAM, and this is very much based around 3 key speakers that we've already been in contact to discuss with. This will be Hamish Avery, and I believe Hamish is in the call. Also Andrew Renton from Transpower, and also Robert Cardwell from ME Research. Robert brings us, he's a recent graduate from a PhD, and he was also the director, or he was previously director of Engineers Without Borders, and also current chairman of Directors Without, Engineers Without Borders. So I think brings a passionate, young, youthful, and exuberant kind of desire to engage in research, and also got reasonably good network connections that can take things further than this area. Yeah, so we will talk more about that as we get closer to QChem. So something to put in your calendars and make sure that you attend. We've also got regular contribution to the QuakeCoRE 2 seminar processes and seminar processes that are going on, and we'll be doing that. We're also looking at an IP4 investigator HUI, and planned for 2023 last quarter, and that's really building on some of the research capability, the ideation work, the HUI style workshop that we're going to be having earlier in the year, but also at times quite nicely with an appointment that we've made within our program, which we have a research capability coming on board that's going to be helping us to take the ideas wider and help people to be able to take their ideas and look at different ways of potentially funding those. We've also got international engagement. It's hard to even say that, isn't it? Given that we have done so little of it over the last couple of years, but it really is time. And I think with New Zealand opening up and with the rest of the world really open already, I think we're going to be looking at what can we do with our international collaborations that we've got with strategic people out there. And part of that's just introducing people into the networks that we have, Nirmal and I, but also some of our senior researchers within our team. Yeah, and really growing that collaboration so that we can bring some of the research that we're seeing in the rest of the world into the New Zealand context, but also what we can take out there and actual that we've got to offer as well in that wider thing. So really facilitating that collaboration. We're also looking at a workshop partnership during the New Zealand-based conference. This is really, and I'd suggest that a number of you who are in the call who are interested in disruptive technologies and harnessing these for seismic resilience, come along to. This is where we're going to be looking at, look, what can we do as a team to move forward, and what will the next year look like, not just this year and what we've got planned here, but in the next couple of years going forward in terms of the program. So Nirmal, do you want to add anything more to that? Have you got anything to add?
No, I think you have eloquently covered most of the things to give us a kind of a roadmap, at least if not for 7 years, at least for the next 2.5 years, because the other disciplinary themes are well geared, well established. There are 5 of them, but the interdisciplinary program is trying to find its niche. But at the same time, try to contribute. So this is what we ideated based on the last 6 months of meeting online, me and Garry. We might have missed something, or we might have, I think we are very enthusiastic supporters and partnered with QuakeCoRE. We know the community pulse of QuakeCoRE, but we want to strengthen that. We want to broaden that. So, and we want to bring our capability into this and really create a safe space for, really looking at, because disruptive technologies and, earthquakes, everything seems disruption. It appears to be an oxymoron, but I think that's not the idea here. So we are trying to build in interdisciplinary capability to do not only business as usual, as was mentioned earlier, but also looking at end-to-end, what is the social dynamics going to be and things like that. So yeah, come research with us. I think these activities are just sandbits where we can engage, and in our busy lives, we want to engage with them. We have industry team members, and some of them have joined here. So we value their passion, we value their contribution as well. But also, anyone else in the other group wants to join us, please feel free to do it. This is not IP4 itself. One of the things was, I think I just wanted to mention in the external bid ideation, well, we are happy to work with someone else as well, but initially we just want to start what we can bring to the table and then kind of cross over with both the disciplinary theme and this thing. So I just wanted to add those kind of qualitative sentiments. So over to you.
Yeah, I'll just say a few closing things and then we can take some questions. From anyone else. Just to remind you, we do have our next webinar scheduled for the 29th of March. and that starts at 11 a.m. If you want to join in and come along to our little webinar within the IP4 community, just flick me an email or Nirmal an email, and I'll add you to the list, and we'll make sure that you can attend those regularly. Also, if you've got any other questions, anything that you would like to discuss, if you've got some ideas, some of those emergent disruptive technologies, please keep those in mind. And also, if you wish to share those, let me know, and we'll create a space within our webinar series for you to be able to do that. Also, just a few administrational things before we do the questions, is that there will be no QuakeCoRE seminar like this one in April. That's due to the timing with regard to Easter. So the next one's actually going to be on the 13th of May, and that will be with IP2 on Thrive and Resilient Communities. So hands out to IP2 over there, and we'll hopefully be connecting with them as well through our program. So Namahi Nui, thank you very much for attending it today and also talking with us. And I'll take any questions that you have with regard to our presentation now. We're all a very quiet bunch today.
They are shell-shocked, eh?
I could maybe ask a question. Thanks both for the presentation. Just interested perhaps if you touch on, there's a few aligned research projects that delve into some of those topics in a bit more detail. So how you know, is there quite a few opportunities to leverage off those research programs as well within this and bring in a wider range of expertise?
I'll start off, Nirmal. I think that's a really good question, Liam. And it is, yes, there is a number of connections. We've got a very strong connection actually with Liam, with the transport group there, so an IP3. So I think, yeah, we definitely are looking at being collaborative across the program, not just internally within our own program. And we will be seeking to actually look at, particularly when we look at some of those activities around ideation, et cetera, that take us beyond it. And I think a really important point, and I think it comes out from what you're saying, Liam, it's often at the interfaces between these things that real research advances are made. So yeah, we would actively encourage people from the other IPs and DTs to come in, and we will be doing the same too. And we've had discussions with various groups within that as well to try and further that. But as Nirmal said, we are young, we're new to the whole area. So what we're trying to do is just build the capacity and capability and get to know each other within our own team. But there is definitely a philosophy, and I think those who know me will definitely know that I'm very interested in making sure we create networks that are wide across our research aims. So we're not going to be just focused internally. Anything you want to add to that, Nirmal?
Yeah, as an academic, I can add. So I think one of the things, Liam, is about creating high potential PhDs who can stand on their own and do those things. So one of the drivers for me is, the AFANO, and I think how to bring them into this interdisciplinary world, because I think what Garry mentioned was our aspiration is around asset management cycle. What is a seismic engineer going to look at in 2035, right? Isn't it our responsibility to create those kinds of individuals or thinkers? I think that's what is coming to. So therefore, one of the things I'm very keen is, we can do all this project management and all that kind of stuff, but we really want that the QuakeCoRE scholars, we really want someone to, apply for a scholarship or something like that within the next 2 to 3 years and say, you know what, I would like someone from IP4 and someone from DT3 to be part of the supervisory team. This should cut across all universities. So right now, the way we have started is, okay, I have to do the contract, I have to do those KPIs and so on and so forth. I'm good at it. Garry is excellent at it. So I think we'll just go with it. We have tried to keep institutional engagement at this stage with market economics, where Garry is, University of Auckland, where I am in a small discipline, and Massey, right? So, but we want to broaden this, right? And we want all the 8 institutions or any other persons to getting involved in that. And the only mechanism we can see is through the PhD program or something like that, and where we actually work with them and let them create the ideas and do it. So I am trying to look at it from a grassroots level, if I may add, and Garry is looking at the top level. And if there are some institutional boundaries, we will knock it off because everyone is there. And if that is there, that needs to be eased out. So I want to create high functioning, at least interdisciplinary, if not transdisciplinary, kind of PhD researchers coming from Quake, at least from IP4, where we don't want to lead it. It can come from discipline, but we can support it. And that's where other aspect is going to come. It's not around technology. I know Gregory is showing his hand, and also John. We are interested in law. We are interested in many things, me and Garry, but we want to engage with everyone, disciplinary theme. But also, as I told you, both IP4 and IP3 are so, we showed those examples, but we have a crystal ball. Remember, Garry showed that crystal ball? Bring it on. We don't know what it is. Can it come from here, or should I get robotics, or should I get some of the other technologies which you don't want to get into? But hey, we have a placeholder for that as well.
Yeah, perhaps we deal with some of the raised hands. John, your one went up and then it disappeared. So we'll give you a chance to say something you wish. So go ahead.
Okay, I was just, I think I was just going to say that one of the issues about emerging technologies, of course, you've got to fit it within a regulatory frame that can cope, and then often that's a barrier. We've seen that particularly in disaster response. Well, we see it with technology generally. So I just wondered, so I'm keen to link these things together. The only problem is I'm stretched thin, and the trick is to finding people. And also I do a bit on this, but it's not my, it's not my area of expertise. So linking you with people maybe outside QuakeCoRE who are in the legal field, work in cutting edge technology and laws. Like there's a centre at Waikato. Maybe that would be the way to do it. But I was just sort of thinking the practice.
No, I absolutely agree. Let me first chime in before Garry, you pick that one off with Waikato. I don't know those folks, but who would have thought 5 years ago that New Zealand would be a space nation? Who would have thought, right? Now we have a regulator. I don't know what all they're forming. After we do the event, we just do it. It's almost like, I don't want to use that N word, the nuclear word, but you shoot the off rocket and then form the regulation and so on and so forth. Yeah, but I think so that is that interesting discussion we need to have, right? So I come from the asset management cycle. Yes, we would be wanting to do that, but we don't want to. We want to bring both the creativity aspect, try to do it safe and saving the world and all that kind of stuff. At the same time, bring the benefit, show us as a pilot test case for the world to watch. This is how New Zealand does it. And can we do it? Yes, we can do it. And so, so there is that kind of exceptionalism, if I may, I want to add that word, in our part, but we don't want to get bound by all the regulation and commerce law and all that kind of stuff. But hey, it is disruption and earthquake, disruption, resilience. Who's going to follow the rules?
I'm just going to, because actually I think it's a really good example of what the problem can be. I've got a PhD student studying space law in New Zealand at the moment. Problem is we've launched into space exploration, well, sort of, and haven't quite understood the liabilities that can bring with it to the state. And our regulations are, well, but if something went horribly wrong, the liabilities of the state are actually really high. And I think that's an example of maybe where you leap on in front and you haven't thought about the regulatory frame.
Agree.
That can be a problem. But anyway, so I agree. Anyway, I'll shut up now, let other people chime in.
Garry, you want to pick up that Waikato offer which John was talking about?
I will definitely do that, John. And John, I've been in, I've talked to some of your colleagues at University of Canterbury and the law school there with regard to this on other occasions, and particularly around the idea, and I think it's really important for our theme, by the way, so thank you for saying it, particularly around the thing is that often the technologies come in advance of our legislative frameworks to adjust with things, and we need to be proactive. This is a change, really, and actually in terms of mitigating the effects and also making sure that we don't have distributional impacts that affect or create inequities in society. We really do need to make sure that we've got processes in place in our legislative frameworks to deliver that. So yeah, this is a critical question, and thank you for coming forward. I will definitely pick that up after this meeting and follow up with you, and we'll see what we can do beyond that. And perhaps, John, you might want to come along to our ideation meeting, because I think there's a real story to be told in that, and it's something that a lot of countries are struggling with. It's not just us in New Zealand, it's across the globe. Yeah. Greg, I'm conscious that you've had your hand up for a while there, so over to you, Gregory. If you want
Okay, no, thank you very much, and very, very interesting presentations. My comments are probably a bit general. It seems to me that a disruptive technology should disrupt. And so what I see missing from the presentations I've seen there is the pathway to implementation, the way it is actually going to disrupt society. And I know, like what Nirmal has been saying, we want everyone involved, but it seems to me that for something like early warning systems, the people who are actually going to implement them and manage them and all that sort of thing should be involved. My understanding when I was in the US was that those systems were developed. The technology was there. They're used in Japan and other places, but they couldn't actually implement them because if they got it wrong, the legal consequences of making a bad decision would be so much that that was better actually not to have any early warning system at all. And so I'm wondering, so the question is, how are we going to make sure that these emerging disruptive technologies actually disrupt? What is the pathway to make this happen?
Gregory, let me go first because I see Hamish here and also Paul Drummond as well. So they would exactly, there was a thumbs up sign regarding that. So we understand what your pinch point and pain points are, but we are really talking about disruption in other sectors. Energy is an example, which I am absolutely comfortable with talking about. We are only 130 years old, okay, electricity. And it has gone through massive disruptions or expectations or whatever. So I think the disruption, it might be a disruption to other people, but it's not a really disruption to us. So the word which we used is mostly from viewpoint of technology itself. It's not really on the other side. But coming back to your specific question on early warning systems, which is why I told you that this has been done by QuakeCoRE 1. We got that, but the next question is, let us brainstorm around that. Maybe the wording is not right, but at least in the research, you have to provide that creative freedom to do a PhD research. Why is it not there? Is it because of the legal framework? We have got John here jumping in and saying, hey, we have to create the legal boundaries. Is that the problem? Is liability the problem? I see someone in insurance as well join here. So these are some other aspects, but those are implementation questions, fantastic questions, but we'll see how it goes. Garry, over to you.
I think, Gregory, that's a really good question to actually ask. I mean, it's like the legal question that John posed. I mean, how can we actually make it happen with the technologies? Because we do want the technologies to come on board. In our program, we focus more on what, we know that technologies are out there and they're emerging. We've said, look, they're going to come. How will they be? But there is that, actually, as you've pointed out, there is that missing little gap of, encouraging technologies to actually be emergent and actually be picked up and move. I'm not sure that we can solve that within the research community I think that comes down to, and that's really more probably in that space of people just doing the adoption themselves and making it happen and agencies coming on board. But I think that there is a bit of research to be done there. And I'll add that to the ideation discussion as well around how can we help enable and facilitate these things to move forward faster than they are. And I don't know whether you're aware, but I remember that recently I've just read a book on the emergence of the internet. And one of the things was because it was considered to be likely to be a failure and no one was particularly interested in it, it meant the idea got out there before any processes could come along and stop it from occurring. So, in some ways, it's the method of how we actually take them out. As soon as we make a big issue of it, then it can often be surrounded with a lot of regulatory tape that makes it hard to go. So yeah, but I do acknowledge that that's a really valid, genuine question, and actually we should be as researchers beginning to think about, like, how can we what is the research required for us to understand the enabling of these technologies, not just the limitations and what might come out of them. So very good question, similar to John's too. And I think it's
Can I just jump in there, Garry?
Yep, please go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I completely agree with you, Greg, and I think that from the perspective of someone that's worked on making new technologies, it often comes down to the community and the people and how they accept it. And I know there's been some really fascinating work done on understanding the impacts of things like earthquake early warning. And I think that's probably worth us engaging with the people that have been involved in that space, because, you know, that's the bit that closes the loop, right? You know, the technology is racing ahead, but often people aren't ready for it for whatever reason. You know, I remember watching one of the seminars here last year from QuakeCoRE, where they showed the video of the Japanese Parliament blindly ignoring the earthquake early warning messages that were coming through because it was culturally inappropriate to react. You know, and it's that sort of thing that you know, is where the intersection of the disruptive technology and the disruptive effects in the community comes. So I think there's a wealth of research and researchers out there, and I think that, you know, engaging them will be very beneficial to us.
Yeah, thanks, Hamish. I think that's really valuable, and it does give us an idea of how we can contribute beyond QuakeCoRE. I think that's an important thing to think, not just beyond the space and the community that we have here, but to create those relationships further out. And there are a different set of skills than perhaps sometimes we've associated with the QuakeCoRE community, but really, really relevant. And I really like the discussion coming out of it. It certainly will be on our list. Yeah, I'm conscious of time. I noticed that we're right on the 10:40. We've just passed over 10:40. Is there anyone else who has a pressing question they'd like to ask before we close out? It seems like we've used up our 40 minutes. I know that a lot of people's lives are busy, so look, we'll close out there. So, but just to remind you, there will be no seminar like this for April. The next one will be on the 12th of May, and on the 13th of May, sorry, and that will be with IP2, looking at thriving and resilient communities. So we'll look forward to that as well. Thanks. Thank you very, very much for your time, guys, and we look forward to some of the discussions outside this space. Any final statements from you?
No, have a great Friday. Yes.
Yeah. Good weekend, guys. Bye for now. Ciao.